In the videos released on the Dinosaur Age channel, we've repeatedly touched upon the topic of unique animals. Their evolution took, at first glance, a very bizarre path. Such creatures began to appear almost from the moment of the origin of life. Probably with the appearance of the very first single-celled organisms, some of them developed according to their own standards. And, of course, all these oddities have always served one purpose: an attempt to better adapt to changes in the surrounding world. We'll tell you about some of the most famous creatures with unique abilities in a new series of our videos. And today, we'll talk about those animals that lived before dinosaurs began to rule the world. By subscribing to the channel, you'll be the first to know about the release of new episodes, and that means you'll have the chance to comment first on their content. Once again, we also encourage everyone to more actively mark the videos they like with likes. This helps our channel get noticed in the platform's algorithms and allows other science lovers to get to know the Dinosaur Age channel. Tiktaalik, a fish on 4 legs. This creature was no longer a fish, but it was still a long way from being a true amphibian. It lived in the distant Devonian period off the coast of modern Canada and Greenland. At that time, these places were home to shallow and fairly warm seas. Perhaps due to the abundance of vegetation, they were more like swamps. Tiktaalik's ancestors had to acquire powerful and long fins to make their way through these thickets. Tiktaalik itself, according to some scientists, were able to move on their flippers along coastal areas. In addition, they had both gills and lungs. This allowed them to spend quite a long time on land. At the same time, on the top of their large triangular head, there was an opening through which the Tiktaaliks could breathe atmospheric air without rising from the water. Despite the fact that the Tiktaalik is classified as a lobe-finned fish, it had a rather unique appearance. It was over 2 to 2.5 meters long. It didn't have a front dorsal fin, but its body was covered with scales. Its large mouth had 2 rows of teeth. There were no connecting plates between the skull and the shoulder girdle. Therefore, Tiktaalik could move its head left and right regardless of the position of its body. Arthropleura, a butterfly of the Carboniferous period. Of course, in reality, Arthropleura was a giant centipede, and butterflies didn't exist at that time. The remains of Arthropleura were found in North America and Scotland. According to scientists, their length could be up to 2.5 meters, due to the fact that the mouth apparatus of these arthropods was never found. For a long time, it was believed that they were active predators. With such dimensions, this isn't surprising. But when analyzing one of the finds, traces of plant food were found in the stomach. This made it possible to assume that the Arthropleuras were inclined to a vegetarian menu. Also, some researchers suggested that these centipedes performed the functions of modern butterflies and participated in the process of plant reproduction. When moving through the thickets, Arthropleura shook off pollen, which was retained in the joints of the scales of their jointed armor. Helicoprion, a fish with a rotating jaw. In 1897, a strange spiral structure was discovered in the late Permian deposits near the city of Krasnoyarsk. The geologist and paleontologist Karpinski, who studied it, found out that the strange pointed outgrowths on the spiral were teeth and belonged to a species of cartilaginous fish unknown at that time. He suggested that this strange structure was the upper jaw. The fish itself was named Helicoprion. This name comes from a combination of Greek words that could be translated as twisted saw. Subsequently, other remains of Helicoprions and related fish were found all over the world. After their study, the dental spiral was moved to the lower jaw. Although there's an opinion that it could have been located inside the fish's throat, it's believed that the teeth began to grow from the base of the spiral. As new ones appeared, the old ones were displaced and gradually shed. How this circular saw was actually used is not entirely clear. Some scientists even suggest that it could actually rotate to a certain extent, sawing through tentacles or mollusk shells, as well as causing serious wounds to fish and other marine animals. There's also an opinion that Helicoprions used it to sift through bottom silt. Scientists don't have more complete finds that could shed light on this problem. There's also no other living organisms with a similar structure of the oral apparatus. Therefore, this mystery remains unsolved for now. Carnufex, a bipedal crocodile. Although this crocodilomorph inhabited North America already at the end of the Triassic period and was the same age as the first dinosaurs, we can't help but include it in this issue. Several scattered bones of this distant relative of modern crocodiles were found in North Carolina almost 20 years ago. When described, It received a species name meaning Carolina butcher. Its body length is estimated at almost 3 meters, and its height 1.5. At the same time, it's believed that the found skeleton belonged to a not quite adult individual. The uniqueness of this crocodilomorph was that it most likely moved exclusively on its hind legs. Its front legs were much shorter. However, no evidence of the bloodthirstiness of Carnufex has yet been found. Scientists don't have bones with traces of its bites or fossilized remains of the contents of its stomach. But the method of movement it chose at that time was undoubtedly advanced. It's not for nothing that after the extinction of these two-legged crocodiles, the dominant predators became two-legged dinosaurs, theropods. Dunkleosteus, a monster fish with a toothless mouth. About 360 to 380 million years ago, in the Devonian period, this armored fish was the main predator of the planet. Its length could reach 10 meters, and its weight, 1 ton. The huge head was covered with armor plates and equipped with a terrifying mouth. This mouth also consisted of bone plates and was more like a beak. Instead of teeth, it had the same bone plates. But even with such a primitive mouth apparatus, Dunkleosteus could not worry about the fact that someone in the ocean would be too tough for them. The bite force of their jaws, according to scientists, were simply monstrous. Even modern crocodiles don't have such speed and bite power. And the Devonian seas were mostly inhabited by mollusks and ammonites. Their shells were easily broken by the jaws of Dunkleosteus. Even the sharks that had appeared by that time could not compete with this living torpedo. Dunkleosteus could bite them in half without much effort. The only creature that could harm this fish was another, larger Dunkleosteus. Cynognathus, woolly lizard. The Permian period was the era of theropods. At this time, a large number of creatures appeared that had many features of modern animals, but had not yet lost some features of reptiles. One of these animals was the Cynognathus. It was quite a large animal by the standards of its time. Its body length could exceed 1 meter. At the same time, almost a third of this size fell on the head with a toothy mouth. Their upper jaw was decorated with powerful saber-shaped fangs. Also, in the mouth of these theropods, there were primitive molars. It's due to this structure of the oral apparatus that Cynognathus got their name. Literally, it's translated as dog jaw. The hind legs of the Cynognathus were located under the body, like in mammals, and its forelimbs were still spread apart, like in reptiles. Cynognathus had differentiation of teeth, like in modern mammals. Studies of fossilized skin impressions of Cynognathus show that their entire bodies were covered in hair. They may also have had vibrissae, sensory hairs that act like whiskers, on their faces. Megawatia, the poisonous bear of the Permian period. The presence of poisonous glands among modern mammals is a great rarity, and only reptiles were able to create a developed apparatus for injecting toxin into the body of a victim from vertebrates. But since the synapsids of the late Permian period can be fully considered a transitional form, among them were animals that presumably had a poisonous bite. Megawatia is known only from one maxillary bone and several other scattered bones found in the Nizhny Novgorod and Vladimir regions of Russia. Initially, the finds were attributed to one of the Gorgonopsid species, but upon closer examination, it became clear that scientists had discovered a new predatory therapsid. In terms of size, Megawatia was approximately the same as modern bears, only its head and, accordingly, jaws were larger in relation to the size of the body. But most of all, scientists were attracted by the structure of the fangs of this formidable predator. Firstly, they were triple and grew from a common alveolar sac, and inside the fangs there were separate canals, which presumably led to glands that produced a poisonous toxin. It's impossible to confirm or refute this hypothesis due to insufficient materials, but if it's proven that Megawatia killed or immobilized its victim with poison, then it'll become the most ancient poisonous vertebrae in the history of the planet. The diversity of unique animal species that inhabited our planet at different times doesn't allow us to talk about all of them in one video. As the history of evolution shows, not all of these features allowed living organisms to successfully adapt to changes in living conditions. But the presence of precisely such, sometimes unusual, deviations allowed them to survive and develop further. In fact, the entire history of life from the simplest single-celled to highly developed mammals come down to the fact that certain unique features contributed to their further development and prosperity. Dinosaurs reigned on our planet for almost 200 million years. During this time, a huge number of species of these amazing creatures appeared and disappeared. Some of them, in the course of evolution, acquired unique abilities and acquired unusual external attributes. The purpose of some of them still remains a mystery to scientists. In this issue, we'll tell you about some strange and mysterious animals of the dinosaur age. Some of them have already been mentioned in our previous issues, while others we'll tell you about for the first time. Subscribe to our channel. This simple action will help you to be the first to know about the release of new videos. We also encourage our subscribers and viewers to comment more actively and mark their favorite videos with likes. This way, you can help in the development and promotion of the channel so that other science lovers can also learn about it. Dilophosaurus, a lizard with increased survivability that could not spit poison. In the first part of Steven Spielberg's film franchise Jurassic Park, viewers were presented with a very strange small dinosaur that could spit poison several meters away. This creature was declared as a Dilophosaurus, but unfortunately, the appearance and unique abilities of this predatory dinosaur turned out to be fiction. Writer Michael Crichton, who created this book series, decided that when restoring the DNA of this species, the genes of one of the poisonous frogs were used. He also gave this dinosaur a chic leathery collar. In this form, Dilophosaurus models are now exhibited even in theme parks with moving dinosaur figures. And as an additional attraction, it pours water from its mouth on passing tourists. In reality, Dilophosaurus were completely different. They lived in the United States and possibly China in the period from 182 to 200 million years ago. Dilophosaurus got its name for a pair of small crests on its head. They were one of the largest predators of their time. They were about 7 meters long and over 2 meters high. They weighed up to 400 kilograms. But these lizards eventually discovered their own superpower. One of the skeletons found showed traces of 8 healed injuries. This indicates the amazing vitality and high regeneration rate of this species. Thanks to these abilities, the Dilophosaurus is listed in the Guinness Book of Records as the dinosaur that received the most injuries. Nothosaurus, fake lizards that lived like seals. The name of these reptiles, which lived almost all over the world for about 210 to 240 million years, translates as fake lizards. In fact, they occupied the niche of modern pinnipeds, and partly also crocodiles and turtles. It's believed that one of the groups of Nothosaurus became the ancestors of the already fully aquatic plesiosaurs. On average, Nothosaurus were 3 to 4 meters long, but there were specimens that reached up to 6 to 7 meters. These were semi-aquatic animals, perfectly adapted for hunting fish and other marine life. Their paws were equipped with membranes, and the teeth of the Nothosaurus had a pointed shape. Their mouth formed a kind of trap for prey. But these animals reproduced on land. There's an assumption that they laid eggs in the coastal sand, like modern turtles. Oryctodromeus, a rabbit from the Cretaceous period. This species was the first of the described dinosaurs that were prone to digging holes. The fact is that in the USA, 3 individuals were found buried under a layer of earth. A more detailed study of the remains allowed us to assume that they died as a result of the collapse of their own hole. The size of the underground chambers and passages corresponded to the dimensions of an adult Oryctodromeus. These were small ornithopods. Their body length was slightly more than 2 meters. They weighed about 20 to 30 kilograms. Their holes had a total length of about 2 meters. They also had side tunnels that were dug by symbiotic animals, that is, smaller creatures that used someone else's hole for safety and ate the remains of the lizard's meal. Moreover, these undoubtedly predatory dinosaurs did not have pronounced adaptations for digging the earth. Their front paws were not very thick. Scientists assumed that they got food by running fast, and bulky front paws would only hinder them in this. This concept is implemented in approximately the same way in modern rabbits. They also live in burrows, but they don't have paws like, for example, a mole. Tyrannosaurus, the first lover of nuts and seeds in history. A small dinosaur from China discovered at the end of the 20th century may well be the ancestor of all ceratopsians. Moreover, the giant descendants of Tyrannosaurus, which lived at the end of the Jurassic period, are not at all similar to it in appearance or habits. The mass of this dinosaur was no more than 20 kilograms, the body length was 110, and the height was 70 centimeters. Presumably, it was a herding herbivore that moved on 2 legs. It did not yet have an impressive protective collar and long horns. Their place was occupied by small growths in the back of the head. But Tyrannosaurus became the earliest known dinosaur with a beak. Scientists associate the presence of this tool with the appearance of the first nuts and other seeds in a hard shell. It turns out that these dinosaurs had at that time the unique ability to crack seeds and nuts. Pegomastax, a cross between a parrot and a porcupine with a built-in tooth sharpener. There have been many strange dinosaurs created over 200 million years, but the Pegomastax can safely claim to be the creature with the most amazing appearance. Its head ended in a short beak and was similar to the head of a modern parrot. At the same time, the body of this small ornithopod was covered with either thin needles or long, dense hairs. Perhaps they served as protection from predators. This dinosaur lived in South Africa about 200 million years ago. It weighed no more than 3 to 4 kilograms and had a body length of about 60 centimeters. One of the most interesting external features of Pegomastax were 4 long fangs protruding from its mouth. At the same time, the dinosaur itself was an herbivore, and the fangs were most likely for digging up roots or cutting plant shoots. Their fangs were positioned in such a way that when the mouth was closed, they sharpened themselves. Linchenicus, an anteater dinosaur that destroyed termite mounds with one finger. The small size of the forelimbs of large predatory theropods has long been a reason for the creation of memes. But the hands of the T-Rex and Carnotaurus look normal compared to what they turned into for the Linchenicus. Although it can be said that this dinosaur did this consciously. It lived in China about 83 million years ago and belonged to the Allosaurus family. Its body length barely reached 50 centimeters and it weighed no more than 500 grams. This baby ate various insects and termites. As a result of such a diet, it was forced to learn how to effectively destroy termite mounds and open thick tree bark. To achieve this, Linchenicus's hands lost most of their bones. In fact, instead of hands, it was left with only one finger, which had completely turned into a claw. Helicoprion, a duck with flippers instead of wings. Around 2011, illegally mined samples of an unknown dinosaur's bones in the Mongolian part of the Gobi Desert ended up in private collections. Scientists were able to study them only several years later. This species was named after the Polish paleontologist, Halszka Osmalska. She was one of the leading experts on Mongolian dinosaurs. The researchers got their hands on a virtually completely preserved skeleton of this small dinosaur. This allowed them to conclude that Helicoprion occupied a rather specific ecological niche. It was a semi-aquatic fish-eating diving dinosaur. Helicoprion was comparable in size to modern mallard ducks. It had a streamlined body and a long goose neck. Its mouth contained a set of sharp, slightly curved teeth designed for catching aquatic inhabitants. It's believed that it could dive for prey to great depths, as modern penguins do. At the same time, the hind legs of the Helicoprion were quite long and thin. This suggests that the dinosaur moved very quickly on land. It was not possible for it to leave the shore forever. After all, like other dinosaurs, it laid eggs. Therefore, the Helicoprion required a unique feather for dinosaurs. For ease of swimming, it grew membranes on its front paws and used them in the water. Nigersaurus, a sauropod with replaceable sets of teeth. About 110 million years ago, a rather unusual lizard lived on the territory of modern Nigeria. It's considered a dinosaur with the largest number of teeth. Nigersaurus was discovered more than 50 years ago, but a more detailed description of this species appeared only in the late 90s of the last century, when more samples appeared for study. It was a classic four-legged herbivorous dinosaur with a long neck. Its length was about 9 meters, and its weight was up to 4 tons. Compared to its relatives, the sauropods, Nigersaurus was quite small, but it had some unique features. Firstly, its jaw was located across the head and was much wider than the facial part of the skull. Secondly, the teeth of this dinosaur were located in a kind of battery. Behind each of the front teeth, there were 9 more spare ones. As it grew older and its teeth wore down, Nigersaurus replaced them with new ones. Its upper jaw included 68, and the lower jaw 60 such columns of teeth. These structures are also seen in hadrosaurs and ceratopsians. But Nigersaurus used more than 500 active and replaceable teeth throughout its life. This makes it a record holder not only among dinosaurs, but possibly among all other animals. In the videos released on the Dinosaur Age channel, we never cease to be amazed by the diversity of living organisms that inhabited our planet at different times. In the next episode of the series about animals with unique abilities and features of appearance, we'll talk about those of them that appeared after the dinosaurs. We'll also talk about modern animals whose descendants survived the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction and successfully exist to this day. Of course, as always, only a small number of them fit into the timing of our release. But if the viewers like this format, then we'll continue to talk about animals with superpowers in the future. By subscribing to our channel, you'll be the first to know about the release of new episodes, and you'll be able to leave your comments under the videos first. You guys can also express your support by leaving a like. These actions will really help promote our videos across the channel, and this way we can plan our future videos on what you all want to see. Doedicurus, an armored knight of the Pleistocene period. At one time, Stegosaurus and Ankylosaurus came up with a special protection from predators. Apparently, the presence of strong dorsal armor and a club on the tail was a fairly effective way to fight toothy monsters. Mammals that captured the planet after the extinction of dinosaurs also decided to use similar methods. One of the brightest representatives of such armored herbivores was Doedicur, or Doedicurus. It was a huge armadillo weighing up to 1.5 tons and reaching 4 meters in length. These giants lived mainly in South and Central America. The last representatives of this family met the first people who settled in their habitats about 10 to 11,000 years ago. Their bodies were covered with impenetrable armor on top, and at the end of the tail, there was a spiked club. It's more reminiscent of a medieval poleaxe, but the scientists who discovered the creature gave it a name meaning tail pistol, referring to its resemblance to the corresponding part of a flower. Ambulocetus, a walking whale that heard without ears. This animal, which lived in the Middle East between 41 and 47 million years ago, is considered to be a transitional form from land creatures to modern cetaceans. Outwardly, Ambulocetus resembled a bizarre cross between a dolphin and a crocodile. Their bodies were covered with fur, and there were membranes between the fingers. They reached 3 meters in length and weighed about 300 kilograms. They were predatory animals that attacked their prey by jumping out of the water, like modern crocodiles do. Ambulocetus lived both near rivers and on the seacoast. It's believed that they swam by bending their bodies in a vertical plane, like modern whales. On land, these animals moved quite awkwardly. Scientists also suggest that they moved from the seas to rivers to give birth and raise offspring. One of the most unique features of Ambulocetus was the structure of their hearing apparatus. They no longer had auricles, therefore they could not perceive air vibrations caused by sound waves. It's believed that vibrations of the environment were transmitted through the bones of the skull. Thylacosaurus, a saber-toothed tiger that was dying of hunger. Despite their saber-toothiness, these inhabitants of South America from the late Miocene and early Pliocene were not cats, but marsupials. At the same time, Thylacosaurus had many features of saber-toothed cats. They were up to 140 centimeters long, excluding the tail, and up to 60 centimeters tall. According to various estimates, they weighed from 55 to 110 kilograms. In these parameters, they could be compared with modern inhabitants of this area, jaguars. Thylacosaurus had a long and powerful neck, but at the same time, it's believed that they were quite slow animals. Their low speed didn't allow them to effectively hunt ungulates. Their prey, most likely, was also slow, and therefore well protected. It was for hunting such animals that long saber-shaped fangs were needed. Moreover, the roots of the Thylacosaurus fangs were much longer than the roots of the Smilodon fangs. Such a structure of the dental apparatus left very little room for the brain. In this respect, saber-toothed cats were clearly ahead of their marsupial imitator. The remaining teeth of the Thylacosaurus were very poorly developed and didn't have the ability to recover. Over time, they wore out almost completely. Some researchers suggest that this was the reason for their short lifespan. Adult animals could not normally cut up their prey and simply died of hunger. At the moment, the animals described above are extinct, but even now, a huge number of creatures with unique skills live on our planet. We'd need to have a much longer video to include more detailed descriptions of their abilities. Therefore, we'll try to briefly talk about as many of them as possible. Number 1. The toad-like lizard, which lives on both American continents, squirts a stream of its own blood at its enemy when in danger. Its blood contains a dangerous toxin. The lizard gets it from the ants it feeds on. It's believed that it can use up to a third of its blood reserves as a weapon without any significant danger to its health. But the most amazing thing is that a stream of caustic blood shoots out of the animal's eyes at the enemy. Number 2. Small jellyfish, Teratopsis nutricula, which have spread from the Caribbean Sea to almost the entire planet, are technically immortal. Having received an injury, Having found themselves in unfavorable conditions, or simply having reached maturity, these creatures, no more than 5 millimeters in size, attach themselves to the bottom or other surfaces and turn into a polyp. During this state, the cells of its body are renewed. After this, the revived immortal jellyfish can again exist in its original form. Moreover, it can reproduce in both states. In the form of a jellyfish, it reproduces sexually, and in the form of a polyp, by budding. Number 3. Modern centipedes are much smaller than the Arthropleura from the Carboniferous period. Therefore, many of them are poisonous. Toxins are necessary for centipedes to protect themselves from predators. Some species of centipedes are capable of secreting poisons from the cyanide group. For example, the dragon centipede from Southeast Asia not only accumulates poison in large doses, but also smells like almonds. This smell is typical for this type of toxin. And the polychrome aphiloria, recently discovered in the wooded mountains of Virginia, USA, can even spray poison around itself. It's believed that the poison in the body of one centipede is enough to kill 18 birds the size of a pigeon. Like many poisonous creatures, these centipedes are very brightly colored, and some of their non-poisonous relatives diligently copy their coloring for self-defense. Number 4. The common ornamented snake lives in the jungles of Southeast Asia. If the word ornamented can still characterize this animal, then the concept of ordinary doesn't apply to it at all. The fact is that this snake, unlike most of its relatives, can fly. Scientific research has shown that it's able to glide without much difficulty from a height of more than 40 meters. For reference, that's roughly a 12-story building. To fly, it's learned to straighten its ribs and use them as a kind of wing. Number 5. Bedbugs have a rather strange but effective way of reproduction. To fertilize a female, the males of these small parasites don't necessarily have to get their genitals into a specific place. They poke them almost anywhere and simply drill into the female's body, injecting their semen directly into the blood. At the same time, a female fertilized in this way doesn't necessarily lay eggs right away. They're able to choose the most favorable time to become pregnant, and in the future, she won't need to resort to the services of a male again for this. Also, the female's body may contain genetic material from different males. And even if a male gets his genitals into the body of another male during fertilization, the latter automatically changes his sex and continues life as a female. Number 6. The hairy frog lives in some areas of Central Africa, but it's notable not only for the thinnest, leathery growths on the side of its body resembling hairs. It's believed that frogs need this tool for breathing. With their help, they retain air bubbles in the water. The real superpower of the hairy frog, which even some comic book heroes would envy, is the way it protects itself from enemies. When in danger, the bones of the frog's hind legs break and cut through the skin. Such sharp claws can simply scare a predator without resorting to a fight. Having avoided danger, the frog retracts its claws and quickly grows them stronger, and also heals the skin. This is very similar to the ability of one superhero from the Marvel Universe. Number 7. A small shrimp called the pistol shrimp has an average length of about 5 centimeters. At the same time, one of its claws is much larger than the other and can exceed the size of its own body. This claw closes so quickly that it forms an air bubble heated to more than 4,000 degrees Celsius and flying at a speed of about 100 kilometers per hour. When bursting, such bubbles make a very loud sound that can deafen and even kill small fish that this crustacean hunts. Under certain conditions, the pistol shrimp can cause serious injury even to a person. But for this, a person must be in the water a few centimeters away from it. Fortunately, such cases haven't been registered at the moment. However, there are unconfirmed stories about minor bleeding from the finger caused by an attack of this small arthropod. Back in the Cambrian geological period, the first predators appeared in the depths of the world's oceans. Some of them climbed to the very top of the food pyramid. It's believed that some creatures came out of the water to escape these super predators. But the evolutionary arms race continued under new conditions of existence. After some time, creatures appeared here too, which can safely be called the masters of prehistoric land. In this issue, we'll talk about such animals and try to understand whether they were all predators. Or, in order to rule the planet, you don't have to eat everyone around you. Subscribe to the Age of Dinosaurs channel, and then you'll be the first to know about the release of new episodes. We also ask everyone to share your opinions in the comments and support the channel with likes. Your activity helps promote our videos according to the platform's algorithms and gives other science enthusiasts the opportunity to see them. The Carboniferous period can be safely called the kingdom of arthropods, the ancestors of modern spiders and scorpions, who until recently terrified the underwater world, began to actively conquer land. Many amphibians and emerging reptiles were easy prey for giant pulmonoscorpions. At that time, insects had quite impressive dimensions. This is due to the higher concentration of oxygen in the atmosphere. The respiratory and circulatory systems of arthropods under these conditions could work more efficiently than they do now. This made it possible to provide oxygen to such large creatures. Pulmonoscorpion, or Pulmonoscorpium, according to the latest data, could have a body length of up to 70 centimeters. At the same time, they could not have large claws. It's believed that these predators relied more on their poisonous sting when hunting. Claws were more often used to cut up helpless prey. These hunters lived in Scotland approximately 338 million years ago. They were described in 1994 by paleontologist Andrew Jerome. At the junction of the Carboniferous and Permian periods, another giant animal lived in Europe and North America. It was a centipede up to 2.5 meters long, called the Arthropleura. However, scientists still continue to argue about its actual size. But even if the Arthropleura was 2 times smaller, its appearance and length are still respectable. In any case, a species of giant centipede, called Arthropleura armata, is the largest invertebrate land animal in the history of the planet. All found fossils of this creature are between 315 and 290 million years old. It's believed that these armored giants weighed up to 50 kilograms. It's unlikely that they had many natural enemies. Their body were protected by many interconnected plates. Each plate covered one of the body segments with a pair of legs. With such dimensions, the centipede had from 112 to 128 legs. The biggest mystery for scientists still remains the diet of Arthropleura. The fact is that not a single fossil has been discovered with an imprint of the oral apparatus of this giant centipede. It's believed that all the remains found are parts of discarded external skeletons. Like many of its relatives, Arthropleura shed their old armor as it grew and acquired a new one. But still, scientists believe that these creatures had large and powerful mandibles. They most likely ate mainly plant foods or carrion. Only adults could hunt smaller animals. It's also believed that the Arthropleura could function as modern butterflies. As the centipede moved through the thickets, it touched plants, and their spores fell to the ground or the back of the animal, so plants at that time could spread to different places. But in the Permian period, the climate on the planet began to change rapidly, and the arthropods gave up their positions. The main predators and the largest herbivores were the so-called beast lizards, or synapsids. Even at the end of the Carboniferous, they were practically no different from their relatives, diapsids. The main difference was the number of temporal foramina in the skull. As the name suggests, diapsids had 2, and synapsids had 1. But these groups took completely different paths in their evolutionary development, and if not for the Great Permian extinction, no one would have known about any dinosaurs. Synapsids became the real masters of the planet for many millions of years. They acquired a developed jaw apparatus and became warm-blooded. Their limbs began to be located almost under the body, and not on the sides of it. This made them faster and more agile. It's believed that the most recent animal lizards already had the prerequisites for the transition from laying eggs to viviparity. Also, some of the representatives of this group were covered with wool. All these characteristics gave the synapsids a good chance for further development. Less developed cold-blooded diapsids were moved away from rich food resources and lived in desert and semi-desert zones. Among the largest and most powerful animals of that time, several rather interesting groups can be distinguished. The earliest representatives are Biarmosicus. These primitive animal lizards, like many other predatory synapsids, belong to the Therapsid order. They lived on our planet approximately 267 million years ago. Their remains were discovered in Russia, in the Perm territory, the Udmurt Republic, and the Arkhangelsk region. Biarmosis was described in 1960 by Peter Chudanov. Some researchers classify it as a Gorgonops, and some as a Dinocephalus. The length of these predators did not exceed 1.5 meters. They, like many other carnivorous lizards, had elongated upper fangs. In fact, it was these creatures that became the first saber-toothed predators on Earth. Some signs suggest that the Biomassacus could lead a semi-aquatic lifestyle. They may have been fast and agile pack hunters. Now, you may have a legitimate question. Why can such small animals be called the masters of the sushi of their time? It's worth noting that there were no truly gigantic animals in the Permian period, and even such small animals could be the dominant predators in their habitat, especially if they lived in packs. But theories regularly arise among scientists that the Biomassacus is not a separate species of animal, but an adolescent stage of development of a larger creature. This animal was named Eotitanosuchus. Its length could reach 4 meters, and its weight exceeded 100 kilograms. If Biomassacus occupied the ecological niche of modern wolves or jackals, then Eotitanosuchus was a real super predator. At the moment, scientists have at their disposal only one incomplete skeleton of this giant. It was found in the same places where Biomassacus lived, in the village of Yezovo, Perm territory. Near the same settlement, the remains of creatures were found that, most likely, were the main prey of Biomassacus and Eotitans. This herbivore is called Estaminaza, and they were all described in 1960 by the same Pyotr Chudinov. The two species of these animals he described were subsequently recognized as one species. It's just that younger individuals did not have pronounced growths on their heads. But still, in the classification of these herbivores, there are now two species, Estaminasaurus ural and Estaminasaurus amazing. If you believe modern reconstructions, these creatures actually looked amazing. Imagine a 4-meter hippopotamus with fangs and growths on its head. These growths were located both on the top of the head and on the sides of the animal's muzzle. In some ways, they resemble the collars of the later Triceratops. The lateral growths on the skull of Estaminasaurus made their heads equal in length and width. Estaminasaurus are representatives of another group of synapsids, Dinocephalians. Most of them were carnivores or omnivores. By the standards of the Permian period, there were real giants among them. According to some researchers, the largest representatives of this group could reach 5 meters in length and weigh about 2 tons. A typical representative of the Dinocephalian suborder was the Deuterosaurus. They lived in the Urals in Siberia. The first finds were made on the territory of Bashkiria in the mid-19th century. This animal was described by the Russian naturalist of German origin, Eduard Eichwald, in 1860. Judging by the structure of the teeth, this Dinocephalus was not a pronounced predator. In fact, in the Siberian ecosystems of the Permian period, it performed the function of modern bears. With a body length of up to 2.5 meters and the presence of powerful jaws, they were the rightful owner of the Siberian forests of their time. It's believed that all Dinocephalians turned out to be a dead-end branch of evolution and left no descendants. But the real masters of the land of the Permian period are Gorgonopsians, who appeared approximately 259 million years ago. This suborder has more than 20 genera. Its representatives lived in the territory of modern Europe, Asia, and Africa. Among them were both very small animals and the largest predators of their time. A separate issue is dedicated to these unusual animals on our channel. From it, you can find out why Gorgonopsids became the most advanced predators of their era. After the Permian extinction, giant reptiles became the masters of the planet for almost 200 million years. And, of course, dinosaurs became the rulers of the land. In different parts of the Earth and in different geological periods, the main predators were large carnivorous theropods. These were animals that walked on 2 legs and had powerful jaws. Smaller theropods hunted in packs and posed a serious threat to many herbivores, although the largest of them appeared only towards the end of the Cretaceous period. Among the most terrible predators of the era of dinosaurs are the following animals. Carcharodontosaurus, a genus of North African theropods from the late Cretaceous period, which had a length of more than 13 meters and a mass of up to 15 tons. Giganotosaurus lived in South America approximately 97 to 98 million years ago. They grew up to 13 meters in length, possibly hunted as part of a pack. Spinosaurus had a length of up to 15 meters and a mass of more than 7.5 tons. They lived in North Africa from 112 to 93 million years ago, and they were most likely a piscivore. Tyrannosaurus, another representative of South America, which had a length of more than 12 meters and a height of up to 4 meters and a mass of about 5 tons. This list can also include maposaurs, carnivores, tarbosaurs, and dozens of other large predators. But the most formidable of them remains the Tyrannosaurus. Some theropods were longer or taller, but the T-Rex was the most massive of the largest predators of the age of dinosaurs. The timing of this video doesn't allow us to describe each of these unique dinosaurs in more detail, but all of them have repeatedly been the heroes of various episodes of our channel. We should not forget about the other giants of the era of dinosaurs, sauropods. These long-necked dinosaurs can also lay claim to the title of masters of the prehistoric land. In all respects, they were superior to the largest predators of that time, and it's very doubtful that any of the theropods actively hunted adult healthy specimens of Argentinosaurus or Patagotitan. These multi-ton giants were not even particularly interested in what was happening under their feet. A similar situation is observed now. There's no more formidable predator on the African savanna than the lion. But a pride of lions will only attack adult elephants if they sense that their prey is vulnerable. Therefore, elephants that survive to adulthood, due to their invulnerability, can feel like the same kings of the land as large predators. Also, we could say the same about such a group of animals as crocodilomorphs. They cannot be fully considered the rulers of sushi, but it's difficult to find more suitable representatives for the title of masters of ancient freshwater bodies. For example, in Africa and South America, at the end of the Cretaceous period, such super predators were Sarcosidae. These giant crocodiles grew up to 9 meters and weighed 2 to 3 tons. North America had its own crocodilomorphs, Dinocephalians. They had a length of up to 10 to 12 meters and a body weight of up to 8.5 tons. True, only the smallest species of crocodiles managed to survive the Cretaceous-Paleogene extinction. But even now, their descendants terrify both animals living near bodies of water or in the water, and people. After the disappearance of dinosaurs, for a short time the most formidable predators became giant flightless birds. Phororhacos. The largest representatives of this family lived in Argentina from 13 to 20 million years ago. They were about 3 meters tall and weighed up to 300 kilograms. These birds ran no slower than small ungulates and could inflict very serious wounds with their massive beaks. Then, almost throughout the entire planet, mammals began to occupy the upper steps of the food pyramid. These were saber-toothed tigers, giant short-faced bears, carnivorous pigs, entelodonts, and many other predators. Among the herbivorous giants, we can recall mammoths and woolly rhinoceroses, Gigantopithecus, as well as Indricotherium, the largest land mammal in history. For a long time, reptiles tried to compete with mammals for the title of the planet's top predators. They were especially successful in this in South America and Australia. Examples include the giant snake Titanoboa and the huge monitor lizard Megawatia. Titanoboa lived in the territory of modern Colombia 58 to 60 million years ago. It was up to 13 meters long and weighed more than a ton. Megawatia lived in Australia from 1.6 million to 40,000 years ago. Theoretically, this monitor lizard, 5.5 meters long and weighing up to half a ton, could hunt the first people who settled the continent. Then the legends about dragons immediately have another possible source. And now, in South America, there are quite large anacondas that may be descendants of Titanoboa. And on several islands of the Pacific Ocean, Komodo dragons live, which are still the most dangerous predators there. Now, the largest land predators in different regions are polar bears, as well as brown and large cats. Among herbivores, ungulates are large in size, elephants, rhinoceroses, giraffes, moose, and buffaloes. But the top of the food pyramid is now occupied by the most dangerous and cruel predator, man. This strange primate is not distinguished by its large size or huge fangs, but none of the modern living beings are able to compete with it on equal terms. And even huge monsters from the era of dinosaurs or later eras could defeat people at their current level of development. At the same time, man is not able, due to the peculiarities of our evolution, to rise above all this fuss, like the giant sauropods or Indricotheres from the past. Cruelty and gluttony are inherent in man by nature, and man cannot behave differently. As is known, the first living organisms on Earth originated in water. Therefore, it was in the seas and oceans that after some time, the first predators appeared. And among them, in different eras, were the real masters of the underwater world. They belonged to different classes and families. Some of them even originated from land creatures that returned to the water. Today, we'll talk about the most interesting and largest aquatic creatures of different eras. Let's also try to figure out why they occupied the upper steps of the food pyramid. subscribe to the Age of Dinosaurs channel. This will allow you to be the first to know when new videos are published, and with the help of your comments and likes, we can develop the channel further. Your activity also promotes the video in the site's recommendation system and allows as many people as possible to learn about our channel. Until a certain time, there was no division among animals into predators and herbivores. The Ediacaran period is sometimes even compared on this basis to the biblical paradise, where all animals lived in peace with each other. But by the beginning of the Cambrian period, the evolution had divided all the inhabitants of the ocean into hunters and their prey, and the largest predator known to us, without a doubt, was Anomalocaris. Its name means unusual shrimp, but in fact, this arthropod has nothing to do with modern shrimp. According to various estimates, the body length of Anomalocaris could range from 38 to 100 centimeters. Some researchers claim that they could even grow up to 2 meters. With the help of lateral lobes and a flat, wide tail, these predators could swim above the ocean floor in search of prey. To control such a complex swimming mechanism, a very developed brain was required for those times. Long frontal appendages that acted as jaws made it possible to grab smaller animals and move them into the oral cone. Also, this super predator of the Cambrian seas had very developed vision. Scientists estimate that their vision were 30 times more powerful than that of trilobites. Namely, they were most likely the main food of Anomalocaris, although they could well eat their smaller relatives. All these adaptations and large size made Anomalocaris the most formidable predator of its time. Judging by the remains found, these creatures lived almost over the globe. At the moment, only 2 species have been described, but there are suggestions that there were at least 10 of them. It's just that not all available remains have been fully studied yet. But after a few tens of millions of years, mollusks entered the race for the upper steps of the food pyramid, and such a creature as Camarasaurus managed to achieve serious results. This ancestor of modern squids and octopuses lived in conical shells up to 10 meters long. Hidden inside such a shell was a powerful beak capable of crushing the most durable shells. To capture prey, this monster used tentacles more than 1 meter long. Camarasaurus lived in the seas of the Ordovician period, approximately 446 to 470 million years ago. Their traces have been found in Europe and both American continents. It's believed that as the organism grew, these mollusks gradually completed their shell. The free space was filled with some kind of gas that helped maintain the buoyancy of this huge tower. This is exactly how the shell of nautiluses that have survived to this day are constructed. Such a mechanism didn't allow fast swimming and maneuvering. Therefore, it's assumed that Camarasaurus used ambush tactics. True, in recent years, more and more researchers have expressed the opinion that they were not predators at all. Based on some signs, it could be assumed that these mollusks fed exclusively on plankton, and they did not have a beak. Despite this, Camarasaurus can still be called the masters of the seas and oceans of their time. It's doubtful that there were animals at that time capable of actively hunting such armored giants. But simultaneously with mollusks, arthropods continued to develop in the seas and oceans of the Paleozoic. The most effective predators among them were crustacean scorpions. The first of them appeared in the Cambrian period, and in the period from 470 to 410 million years ago, they reached their peak. That is, for 100 million years, cancer scorpions reigned in all the seas of the planet. The largest of them grew more than 2.5 meters in length. For such giants, everything that swam in the water and crawled along the bottom was easy prey. The body of the scorpion cancer was protected by powerful armor. Huge claws easily cut through the shells of other animals. At the same time, they were good swimmers. For this purpose, their hind limbs had a special shape. Later, only the smallest varieties remained, and even those moved to freshwater bodies of water. And after the Great Permian extinction, not a single crustacean scorpion remained on Earth. Only those of them who managed to move to land were lucky. They gave rise to all living arachnids. During the dominance of crustaceans, the ancestors of modern fish also suffered from them. But already in the Devonian period, it was fish that became the dominant creatures in all seas and oceans. And the most terrible monster of that time can be considered Dunkleosteus. This fish became the first megapredator among vertebrates. Even the sharks that had already appeared during the existence of Dunkleosteus could not compete with it for the title of Master of the Ocean. According to various estimates, their length ranged from 6 to 9 meters, and later studies showed that the largest specimen found was slightly more than 4 meters in length. it's quite difficult to reliably estimate the size of Dunkleosteus. Most of the found skeletons of this fish are barely a quarter preserved. Scientists mainly have their heads and jaws at their disposal. Dunkleosteus is a gnathostome fish. In the seas of the Devonian period, the presence of full jaws in living creatures was very rare. Even in Dunkleosteus, there were 2 self-sharpening bone plates. This formidable predator also had no teeth at all. Therefore, it's believed that Dunkleosteus simply bit its prey in half. Only their larger relatives could pose a danger to these armored living torpedoes. Perhaps this predator used another interesting method of hunting. Research has shown that Dunkleosteus could open its terrible mouth in 20 milliseconds. This allowed him to draw in a large volume of water along with all living organisms at a terrible speed. Nowadays, some types of perch use a similar method. The fossilized remains of these fish are found in the USA, Canada, Morocco, Russia, and some European countries. Their age ranges from 358 to 382 million years. Currently, scientists have described about 10 species of these predatory fish. Only the Permian extinction put an end to their dominance in the seas. Together with Dunkleosteus, a huge number of representatives of marine fauna became extinct at the beginning of the Triassic period, and land dwellers began to take their place. Dinosaurs were just beginning to dominate there, and the lizards that moved into the water gave rise to a large number of diverse marine animals. Among these reptiles, there were many new rulers of the deep sea. Ichthyosaurs became the threat of the seas of the Triassic period. Some of them were adapted for fishing, others ate large animals, including their relatives. Among them, there were many real giants. One of these predators was the Thalattorchan. They lived in what are now the United States between 242 and 247 million years ago. Its length was about 8.5 meters. According to researchers, this ichthyosaur was one of the first Triassic creatures capable of feeding on prey of a similar size to itself. This style of feeding is commonly called macrophage feeding. The appearance of such predators just a few million years after the global extinction indicates the rapid restoration of the aquatic ecosystem. Another type of large ichthyosaur from the early Triassic period was Symbospondylus. Their name was a combination of words meaning bowl and vertebra. According to one version, it occurred due to the fact that miners in Nevada, where this lizard was discovered, used its vertebrae as plates. Different types of these sea lizards had a length from 4 to 10 meters, but the largest species of Symbospondylus grew up to even 17 meters. Their body was not yet fully adapted for swimming. The head of this predator could exceed 1 meter in length. The mouth had an elongated shape and was studded with small, sharp teeth. This made it possible to retain caught fish and shellfish, as well as grind the shells of various arthropods. But for swimming, Symbospondylus used a long, flattened tail, like modern iguanas or sea snakes. These early ichthyosaurs had not yet developed normal caudal and dorsal fins. And in the Jurassic period, ideal marine predators appeared in the shallow seas. Plesiosaurs. This order includes more than a dozen families, divided into 2 groups. Fish-eating plesiosaurs had a long neck and a relatively small head, and the more versatile pliosaurs had a large mouth and a short, powerful neck. But among the representatives of both groups, there were quite large creatures. For example, it was previously believed that one of the largest pliosaurs, Liopleurodon, weighed up to 150 tons and grew up to 25 meters. Later studies showed that the largest plesiosaurids only grew to 13 meters in length. When swimming, they used 4 lateral flippers, like modern sea turtles. To test their capabilities, a special robot was even designed that used a similar method for swimming. As a result, it turned out that the simultaneous flapping of the fins allowed the lizards to develop greater speed, and movements with different limbs allowed for quick maneuvers. It's noteworthy that Plesiosaurus, unlike their land and flying relatives, did not lay eggs. They were viviparous. This allowed them to not go to land and become more adapted to life in the water. The first plesiosaurs appeared approximately 203 million years ago, and they went extinct along with the dinosaurs about 66 million years ago. Towards the end of the Cretaceous period, new contenders for the title of Masters of the Ocean appeared. These were mosasaurs. At the moment, at least 5 species that belong to this family are known. These were large sea lizards with large skulls and powerful jaws. Their length ranged from 10 to 17 meters. The largest of them could weigh up to 15 tons. The remains of mosasaurs have been found on all continents, including Antarctica. This indicates their distribution throughout all the oceans of the planet. Like other described aquatic reptiles, mosasaurs descended from some land lizards. Their legs evolved into flippers. Moreover, the forelimbs were longer than the hind limbs. It's believed that these predators wriggled while swimming, like modern eels. Most mosasaurs were adapted to feed on fish, but the larger ones could well have hunted plesiosaurs and their smaller relatives. Scientists have also found shells of ancient turtles with traces of teeth. Perhaps these marks were left by mosasaurs. After the end of the era of dinosaurs and to this day, sharks and cetaceans compete for primacy in the seas and oceans. And if the first ones appeared in the Devonian period, then the second ones repeated the path of plesiosaurs, ichthyosaurs, and mosasaurs. The ancestors of whales were land mammals that lived in the coastal zone. Basilosaurus can be considered the most successful among ancient whales. Even though their name means royal lizard, basilosaurs were mammals. At first, the skeletons of these ancient cetaceans were mistaken for the remains of snake-like creatures. Their length was estimated at 30 meters. It's now believed that the largest basilosaurs grew only to 15 to 20 meters. At the same time, they were still larger in size than most aquatic inhabitants. Therefore, for several million years, basilosaurs were the dominant predators of the Earth's seas and oceans. Their fossilized remains are found in North America, the Middle East, and North Africa. These fossils are estimated to be 34 to 40 million years old. Essentially, basilosaurs are an intermediate link between land ungulates and modern whales. Their body acquired such enormous length due to elongated vertebrae, which may have been filled with fluid inside. It's believed that basilosaurs curved their bodies when swimming. Their hind limbs can only take two positions and could hardly help when moving in water. In terms of their internal structure, they are vestigial legs. Some scientists suggest that these limbs, up to 60 centimeters long, perform the same functions as those of modern boa constrictors. They're used to holding the partner during mating. In modern whales, these hind limbs are almost completely absent. The breathing hole in basilosaurs was located much closer to the head. As cetaceans evolved, it moved to the back. There's also considerable debate among scientists about whether basilosaurs could dive as deep as modern whales. It's believed that there's not enough space in their skull to accommodate sound location organs. Therefore, most likely they lived in the upper layers of water. The prey of basilosaurs included various types of fish and shellfish, as well as sharks, which were much smaller than these ancient whales. Despite that, sharks appeared about 400 million years ago. Since those times, they have not changed much in evolutionary terms. The size of these predatory cartilaginous fish changed mainly from era to era. They tried to compete with gnathostomes in the Devonian period, lived next to the aquatic lizards of the Mesozoic, and hid from predatory basilosaurs at the junction of the Paleogene and Eocene. But 28 million years ago, a super predator appeared among sharks. We are, of course, talking about the Megalodon. This giant shark, according to some estimates, could be up to 20 meters long. Now, cetacean mammals have become easy prey for the Megalodon, but about 2.5 million years ago, these giants went extinct. Perhaps the separation of the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans forced the whales to migrate to colder waters, and megalodons were adapted to life in warm water and were unable to follow their prey. This forced them to feed on their own young. Total cannibalism led to the rapid degeneration of these predators. There's also the opinion that they could not withstand competition with more organized killer whales or even their relatives, white sharks. Now these animals are the dominant predators of the world's oceans. Among the predatory cetaceans, one can recall sperm whales, and among sharks, the whale shark can be noted. Considering the maximum adaptability of sharks to life in water and the duration of their existence on the planet, it could be assumed that they will outlive both modern whales and people. Or perhaps some new predator will decide to follow the path of ancient lizards and whales, returning from land to the ocean. And then in the future, the seas and oceans of our planet will have new owners. Since the appearance of the first predatory animals on our planet, the struggle for the title of the most dangerous creature began. This race continued after life reached land, but some animals decided that they should begin to explore the airspace. After this, the struggle for the upper levels of the food pyramid also spread to the sky. And today, we'll talk about those animals that became the real masters of the sky of their time. Subscribe to our channel so you'll know about the release of new videos before others. We also encourage all our viewers to actively support the Age of Dinosaurs channel with likes and comments. This will help in the development of the channel and will allow our releases to be seen by as many users as possible. The first animals that began to explore the airspace were arthropods. And among them, undoubtedly, the most formidable predator was the giant dragonfly, Meganora. According to various estimates, its wingspan reached 60 to 70 centimeters. In earlier studies, this parameter was estimated even at 1 meter. For the Carboniferous period, this flying predator was a real monster. Although debates about the lifestyle, diet, and other behavioral features of the Meganora are still ongoing, there's also a lot of controversy about the size of insects of that time. Some scientists express the opinion that with such dimensions, Meganora simply could not fly. But don't forget that 300 million years ago, the oxygen content in the atmosphere was much higher. The primitive respiratory system of insects could work much more efficiently than it does now. In addition, we only know about Meganora from imprints on fossils, and some details of the structure of their body may be unknown to modern scientists. The habitat of these giant dragonflies was humid jungles and wetlands. Moreover, scientists are not entirely sure whether the Meganora larvae led an aquatic lifestyle, like modern dragonflies, but data suggests that the larvae were large in size, had a high speed of movement, and were no less voracious than adults. And given the size of this dragonfly, its prey wasn't just only other insects. It's quite possible that the Meganora's diet included small fish and amphibians. Gradually, arthropods began to lose their leading position, and in the Permian period, animal lizards began to move to the first positions. The most advanced group of that time were the synapsids. They became the ancestors of dinosaurs, crocodiles, and other reptiles, and it was among the synapsids that the first reptiles appeared and began to master flight. These pioneers were the Weigeltosaurus. The first fossils of these unusual lizards were discovered in Germany. Similar finds were also made in Madagascar, the British Isles, and Russia. Many parts of the body of Weigeltosaurus were arranged almost the same as those of modern lizards, but in addition, they had a unique mechanism, which scientists call a flying membrane. This is the first that this device has been found. The flying membrane consisted of sets of side rods connected by membranes. Recent studies show that in their structure, these outgrowths are osteoderms and resemble elements of the shell of modern crocodiles. Of course, with the help of such a simple mechanism, it was impossible to fly in the full sense of the word. Most likely, Weigeltosaurus only glided from one tree to another. The real masters of the sky appeared on Earth only with the advent of the era of dinosaurs. They became pterosaurs, a group of flying lizards related to dinosaurs. Most of them ate exclusively fish, but among them, at different times, truly gigantic creatures still appeared. Some of them should be discussed in more detail. Dimorphodon. The increase in the size of flying lizards was gradual, and the largest of them appeared closer to the end of the Cretaceous period. Therefore, Dimorphodon and its relatives can be considered the lords of the sky of the early Jurassic period. The name of this pterosaur means two kinds of teeth. The name was given to it in 1859 by naturalist Richard Owen. Since the division of teeth according to shape and purpose is extremely uncharacteristic for reptiles, the body length of Dimorphodon was about 1 meter, and the wingspan was about 145 centimeters. Caelestiventus. In 2018, an even earlier representative of the Dimorphodonid family was described. The celestial's beak contained teeth of as many as 3 different types. This pterosaur, large by Triassic standards, lived in the state of Utah in the USA. Its wingspan was about 1.5 meters. Like other members of the family, the Caelestiventus had an elongated skull with a large beak. Their nostrils were triangular in shape and located close to their eyes. It was also one of the few pterosaurs that could look forward rather than to the sides. Rhamphorhynchus. The niche now occupied by seabirds like gulls was occupied by Rhamphorhynchus in the Jurassic. It's believed that this family included 3 species, but some scientists express the opinion that all the found remains could belong to representatives of the same species of different ages. There are studies confirming this hypothesis for Rhamphorhynchus found in Germany. Also, traces of the presence of these pterosaurs have been found almost throughout Europe and North Africa. They lived from 162 to 145 million years ago. The wingspan of the largest individuals could reach almost 2 meters. Like all piscivorous pterosaurs, Rhamphorhynchus had an elongated beak with sharp, long teeth. A distinctive feature of this family was a long tail with a diamond-shaped tassel at the end. Pterodactyl. This species of flying lizard became the first pterosaur discovered in the history of science. 2 separate finds were made in Germany at the end of the 18th century. At different times, these fossils were attributed either to flying creatures, then to extinct crustaceans, or to winged mammals like bats. Over the next 200 years, all pterosaurs found were classified as pterodactyls. The approach to their classification changed only at the beginning of the 20th century. At the moment, only 2 species are considered pterodactyls. These small pterosaurs were distributed throughout Europe and Africa during the Jurassic period, approximately 150 to 165 million years ago. The wingspan of the largest of them reached 1 meter, and the body length did not exceed 60 centimeters. They weighed no more than 2 kilograms. And the largest flying creatures of the era of dinosaurs, and indeed the entire history of the planet, belonged to the Azhdarchid family and lived at the end of the Cretaceous period. It's still a mystery to many how these giants were able to fly at all, but it's very likely that even with their enormous size, all giant pterosaurs had very small, relative to size, mass. The largest representatives of this family were the following animals. Tropheognathus. This is a separate genus of pterosaurs from the Ornithoceridae family. It was discovered less than 40 years ago in Brazil. The age of the find dates back to the beginning of the Cretaceous period, approximately 110 million years ago. So far, only one species is classified as Tropheognathus. Its wingspan definitely exceeded 8 meters, and the height of this lizard could reach 170 centimeters. According to some estimates, Tropheognathus could weigh up to 100 kilograms. Therefore, it's believed that they could take off only after a short run. Tropheognathus had a rather interestingly shaped beak. At its end, there were large vertical thickenings. This peculiar keel gave the name to this pterosaur. Literally, it translates as keel jaw. Scientists believe that Tropheognathus hunted by dipping its beak into the water while flying. The presence of a keel prevented the beak from yawning along the course. Inside its mouth were thin, sharp teeth, perfectly adapted for catching and holding fish. But perhaps Tropheognathus did not disdain baby dinosaurs and other small land animals. Thanatos dragon. This pterosaur is considered the largest flying creature in the history of South America. Its name means dragon of death. The species name of this lizard also contains the name of the ancient god of the Peruvian Indians, Amaru. The remains of 2 individuals of the new pterosaur were discovered in Argentina in 2022. After studying them, the wingspan of this giant was estimated at 7 to 9, and its height was 3.5 meters. The fossils found are very fragmentary. Therefore, scientists know very little about Thanatos dragons so far. The age of the finds estimated at approximately 86 to 89 million years. Quetzalcoatlus. This genus from the Azhdarchid family was discovered and described much earlier than most of its relatives. Therefore, it is the best known and most studied of them. They lived in North America around 66 to 68 million years ago. The first fossilized remains of Quetzalcoatlus were found in the United States in 1971. Initially, its wingspan was estimated at 15 to 20 meters, but later studies showed that this parameter was no more than 11 to 12 meters. But even so, this lizard became the largest flying creature in the history of the planet. While on land, Quetzalcoatlus had a height comparable to modern giraffes. This is about 5.5 meters. The most heated debate is still ongoing over the body mass of this giant. Various researchers voice figures from 70 to 540 kilograms. Built in 1984, the flying model weighed about 80 kilograms. This aircraft was created to simulate the flight of Quetzalcoatlus. It was controlled by a simple computer autopilot and showed good aerodynamic capabilities of large pterosaurs. But still, most scientists agree that in order to fly, such giants needed a runway or a high launch pad, a rock or a large tree. Cryodragon. This species of pterosaur lived in what is now Canada, approximately 76.5 million years ago. It was for this reason that they were given a family name, meaning frosty or ice dragon. The specific name Boreas is the name of the ancient Greek god of the north wind. Also, when describing and choosing the name of a new species from the Azhdarchid family, an option was considered to call it Cryodragon viceres. This was the name of one of the dragons in the series of books by George R.R. Martin and the TV series Game of Thrones based on them. It was this dragon that was killed by the Night King and turned into an ice one. The remains of this giant lizard were discovered back in 1972, but then they were described as just another Quetzalcoatl. The error was corrected only in 2019, when a group of scientists re-examined the find. As a result, several differences between the cryodragon and its related Quetzalcoatlus were discovered. The wingspan of the found individual was about 5 meters, but scientists believe this pterosaur was not yet fully grown. It's believed that its maximum wingspan could be approximately 2 times greater, and adult ice dragons could weigh up to 250 kilograms. Hatzegopteryx. This large European pterosaur was related to Quetzalcoatlus. It lived in Romania at the very end of the Cretaceous period. In terms of wingspan, Hatzegopteryx is quite comparable to its overseas relative, but their height was slightly shorter due to their shorter and more powerful neck. This feature of the body may also indicate differences in the way of nutrition. With such a body structure, this predator could hunt not only fish and small animals, but large dinosaurs could also be prey. Aramburgiana. This type of pterosaur was discovered in the early 40s of the last century, but scientists currently have very few fossils to describe it in detail. Initial studies showed that the wingspan of this lizard was even greater than that of the Quetzalcoatlus, but later descriptions reduced this size to just about 7 to 9 meters. Undoubtedly, Azhdarchids are the largest flying creatures in the entire history of the Earth, but at the same time, creatures such as Pteranodonus lived with them and competed with them. These piscivorous pterosaurs lived in the United States and Japan. Their wingspan couldn't exceed 7 meters. The main distinguishing feature of this group of pterosaurs was an elongated, sharp beak, completely devoid of teeth. But 66 million years later, all pterosaurs became extinct as a result of climate change across the planet caused by the fall of a huge meteorite. But only the most progressive group of flying dinosaurs, birds, managed to survive the cataclysm. The largest of them were flightless and even occupied the niche of top predators in some regions. But even among the flyers, there were their giants. They became the masters of the air elements and remain so to this day. About 25 million years ago, a genus of bird called Palagornis appeared. They lived in Europe, North Africa, and both American continents. The name Palagornis translates as seabird. In fact, these giants fully lived up to their name. It's believed that their lifestyle coincided with that of the wandering albatross now. This bird has the largest wingspan of any living species. It's up to 3.5 meters. The albatrosses weigh no more than 10 kilograms. The body length of Palagornis was up to 2 meters, and the wingspan was up to 7.5 meters. They weighed from 20 to 32 kilograms. They had a skull of up to 60 centimeters long. A characteristic feature of these birds were bizarre outgrowths on the inner surface of the beak. These outgrowths vaguely resembled teeth and may have performed similar functions. Palagornis became extinct about 2 million years ago. Another giant bird, Argentavis, lived in South America. It was first discovered in 1980 in Argentina, which is how it got its name. They lived in these places from 6 to 9 million years ago. With a height of just over 125 centimeters and a body length of about 2 meters, the wingspan of Argentavis was 5 to 6 meters. But the Argentavis were much more massive than Palagornis. According to some estimates, their body weight could reach up to 70 kilograms. The length of their skull was up to 45 centimeters with a sharp hook-shaped beak. And based on its structure, scientists concluded that Argentavis was an active predator, not a scavenger. It's believed that the basis of its diet were large rodents. Researchers suggest that the bird fell onto a group of rodents from a great height. Then the predator simply swallowed the wounded or stunned animals. In many ways, scientists determined the appearance and habits of Argentavis by comparing it with the Andean condor or harpy eagle. Condors, although scavengers, are considered the most massive flying bird in the world. The weight of their males can reach 15 kilograms, and their wingspan is 3 meters. By studying their behavior, one can understand how such a heavy bird as Argentavis behaved in flight or set up nests. In harpies, females are larger. They can weigh up to 9 kilograms. The wingspan of this forest eagle from South America can be about 2 meters. The harpy is an active predator and is distinguished by great strength and a powerful beak. At one time, it was considered an honorable and dangerous prize among the local Indians, and the farmers simply waged a long war with them. After all, harpies easily dragged away poultry and even dogs. As a result, this predator is now listed in the Red Book. Modern birds, in comparison with their ancestors, are not large in size, and arthropods and reptiles now don't even think of rising high into the sky. But evolution doesn't stand still. Perhaps someday there will be creatures capable of displacing birds from their leading positions and becoming the new masters of the sky. But for now, the sky is increasingly roamed by man-made birds, created by the most dangerous predator, man. According to scientists, our planet's currently over 4.5 billion years old. And for most of this time, it was practically lifeless. Very little time has passed since the appearance of modern animals, and especially people. If we take the entire time of the Earth's existence as 1 year, we'll see how small this period is. In today's issue, we'll try to conduct such an experiment and clearly show how insignificant the role of humanity is in the history of the world. Subscribe to the channel Age of Dinosaurs. This will allow you to be the first to know when we release new videos, and you can leave your comments below about what you've seen before other users. We also encourage everyone to leave a like if you like it. This will help our content a lot and give other science lovers the opportunity to get acquainted with the work we do. If we imagine that the time of our planet's existence is equal to 1 calendar year, then each of its seconds will be equal to approximately 143 years. 1 hour corresponds to 518,000 years, and a day about 12.5 million years. Imagine that before January 1st of this hypothetical year, in the place of the modern planets of the solar system, there was a cluster of rocks, gases, and cosmic dust. This cloud revolved around the already formed sun. Gradually, planets began to form around larger fragments, and with the first second of the new year, the Earth appeared. At that time, its surface was covered with oceans of hot magma and was subjected to constant cosmic bombardment. And on January 3rd, after a collision with a large asteroid or a smaller planet, a fairly large piece broke off from the Earth, but the force of gravity didn't allow it to move away a large distance and go into free flight. This fragment gradually turned into the Moon, the only satellite of our planet. About a month later, February 4th, the surface of the planet cooled and formed a solid crust, but due to the decrease in temperature, water ceased to exist only in the form of steam. The first oceans appeared on Earth. The formation of the atmosphere also began, but inside, lava continued to rage. Eruptions and earthquakes occurred constantly. Modern inhabitants of the planet simply couldn't exist at that time, but even in such harsh conditions, the emergence of living organisms became possible. The first inhabitants of the Earth, which appeared on March 1st, were bacteria. They were single-celled and quite primitive. By April 18th, the formation of the Earth's core was finally completed. Due to its influence, the atmosphere was protected from the effects of solar radiation. Living conditions became much more comfortable. These changes especially affected the seas and oceans. And already on May 20th, the evolutionary development of single-celled organisms led to the emergence of so-called cyanobacteria, or blue-green algae. Their unique ability was to release such a gas as oxygen as a product of their vital activity. They obtained it through photosynthesis, that is, under the influence of sunlight. In the same way, carbon dioxide is converted into oxygen in the green leaves of modern plants. The spread of these new microorganisms for the planet eventually led to the first global extinction in its history. This extinction is commonly called the Huronian, after the place where its most striking traces were found. In sediments corresponding to that era, and in our conventional calendar year it was June 21st, found near Lake Huron in North America, there's evidence of a sharp reduction in oxygen in the atmosphere. In fact, cyanobacteria killed themselves. In the absence of any enemies or negative factors limiting their spread, these microorganisms captured the surfaces of all bodies of water on the planet. Uncontrolled release of oxygen led to irreversible changes in the atmosphere. Methane, which is one of the most important gases involved in the creation of the greenhouse effect, was practically displaced from it. The temperature across the planet dropped sharply. This led to its complete glaciation. Those living organisms that had not previously died from an excess of oxygen harmful to them simply froze. The same fate befell blue-green algae. The decrease in their population allowed the atmosphere to be restored, and gradually the temperature on the Earth's surface reached habitable values. In our calendar, The end of the Huronian glaciation can be marked on July 16. It was the longest, but not the most famous ice age in the history of the planet. On July 23rd, the first multicellular organisms appear, but another global-scale cooling leads to their rapid extinction. The period from August 9th to November 4th has received the unofficial name Boring Billion in science. During these 3 conventional months, several events that are essential for the evolution of living organisms occurred. But in general, the development of life moved evenly and slowly. This is explained by the low content of one of the most important gases in the atmosphere, oxygen. On August 17th, the first single-celled organisms with a nucleus appeared. They were called eukaryotes, and single-celled organisms without a nucleus are called prokaryotes. The presence of a nucleus provided a more progressive way of copying DNA during reproduction. In short, prokaryotes copied their DNA completely without any changes, and each new organism was a clone of the old one. Variability within a species was thus minimal, and in the presence of a nucleus, the DNA chain was copied in parts, and these fragments were folded into a new chain in different ways. This became a step that determined the course of further evolution of all living organisms on the planet. On October 28, a new species of living organisms appeared on the planet, mushrooms. What's noteworthy is that they originated, like all other living organisms, in the ocean. They began to develop land only on November 11th. On November 18th, creatures also appeared in the ocean that became one of the dominant animals on the planet for a long time, starting with a huge variety of sea scorpions of the Cambrian period and ending with modern spiders. All of them were maximally adapted to their living conditions. Nature has gifted arthropods with a huge number of useful adaptations for hunting and protection from dangers. After the boring billion, the rest of our conditional year turned out to be very eventful and diverse. On November 19th, early in the morning, a phenomenon called the Cambrian explosion occurred. The seas and oceans turned out to be densely populated by a variety of different and very numerous species of living creatures. At this time, almost all types of modern living organisms, both marine and terrestrial, were born. By lunchtime of the same day, the first developed animals came out onto land and began to develop new territories for themselves. And closer to the evening of the same November 19th, the Paleozoic era will begin. According to our conventional calendar, it'll last about 3 weeks and end on December 12th. At this time, many events also happened that are worth mentioning in our calendar. On November 24th, plants followed the animals onto land. First, coastal areas, and then more remote areas of land are covered with a green carpet. These plants will subsequently create the atmosphere we're accustomed to and provide our civilization with coal deposits. On November 26, another major extinction occurred. It occurred on the border of the Ordovician and Silurian geological periods. It's believed that this was the first extinction that was provoked by volcanic activity. There's evidence that 2 catastrophic eruptions occurred simultaneously in different parts of the planet. One of them occurred in what's now southern China, and the other in North America. According to some estimates, about 60% of all marine invertebrates were among the extinct species. On November 29, something that's familiar to us but unique for its time, a device known as teeth appeared. Fish were the first to use this tool. Then other species of living creatures also used it. The teeth of different animals later acquired many different and sometimes very bizarre forms. Each of their types began to be used to solve specific problems. On December 2nd, our planet suffered another large-scale catastrophe. During the so-called Devonian extinction, a huge number of species of living organisms disappeared from the face of the Earth, including all jawless ones. Before the catastrophe, living conditions were very comfortable. The water temperature in the ocean averaged about 26 degrees. There were no ice caps at the poles yet. The planet was covered with green forests of ferns and other primitive plants, but these plants emitted a huge amount of oxygen into the atmosphere. They were also helped in this by actively growing algae. Rotting plants and the layers of soil destroyed by them washed into the ocean and became food for various microorganisms. Their rapid development was accompanied by the extraction of oxygen from the water. Most sea animals failed to adapt to such a sharp drop in the concentration of the gas vital to them. The oceans were practically empty, and the catastrophe moved into a new phase. Another ice age occurred. After about 2 to 3 days, life was already actively restored. Animals not only repopulated the seas, but also captured the land. On December 5th, all the continents of that time completed their unification into a single supercontinent, Pangaea. December 12th became a tragic day in our conventional calendar. On this date, the Great Permian Extinction falls. It became the most massive in the history of the planet. According to some estimates, up to 96% of all marine fauna and about 73% of land vertebrates died on this day. Losses in the insect class amounted to 86%, but this same day marked the beginning of the Mesozoic era, the age of dinosaurs. The first dinosaurs known to us appeared on December 13th, and after them, around December 15th, the first mammals appeared. For simplicity, it's probably safe to refer to them as mammals. One of these animals was the Morganocodon. Its body length did not exceed 12 to 13 centimeters. Most likely, it was oviparous and led a nocturnal lifestyle. This creature fed on insects. At night, it hunted on the ground or in trees, and during the day, it hid in burrows. On December 16th, Pangaea begins to split into the modern continents we now know today. At the same time, climatic and geological changes led to another mass extinction. Almost half of all animals that lived on Earth die out. It's believed that it was after this Triassic-Jurassic extinction that the total dominance of dinosaurs began. The era of dinosaurs ended only by the evening of December 27th. It's noteworthy that the most popular dinosaurs in popular culture, such as the Tyrannosaurus or Triceratops, appeared only in the middle of this day. According to the most common version, the cause of the global cataclysm that killed the dinosaurs was the fall of a huge meteorite. Its crater is located in the Gulf of Mexico, and its size is about 300 kilometers. This event ends the Mesozoic and begins the Cenozoic era, in which we still live. All the animals we're familiar with now appear on December 28. By December 30th, the world of plants becomes what it is now. On the same day, the first anthropoid apes appear. The first representative of the genus Homo is born only on the evening of December 31st. The entire subsequent history of mankind takes up a few hours, minutes, and seconds on our calendar. For example, the Heidelberg man, who's considered one of our probable ancestors, began to wander the African savanna just an hour before the new year. At 2318, Neanderthals appear, a dead-end branch of mankind, having lost the battle for survival to our species, which appeared 18 minutes later, at 2336. Despite the fact that the Neanderthals left Africa earlier and settled in Europe, our ancestors turned out to be more adapted and organized. At 2347, modern humans, called Cro-Magnons, populate the Middle East, and at 2351, they reach Southeast Asia, continuing their advance along the islands of the Pacific Ocean towards Australia. It was at this moment that human history as we know it could have been interrupted, practically without having begun. Approximately 10 minutes before the new year, the Toba volcano erupts in what is now known as Indonesia. It was so powerful and intense that it changed the climate across the globe. According to scientists, at that moment, the entire human population on the planet dropped to just 10,000 individuals. But humanity was able to survive and continue its development. At 2353, spoken language appears. At 2354, Homo sapiens appear in Europe. Within 2 minutes, the Neanderthals, displaced into less habitable areas, die out completely or are assimilated by our ancestors. At 2355, a person acquires his first friend and assistant, the domestication of a dog. According to some scientists, this factor could have influenced the victory in the evolutionary race with the Neanderthals. At 2357, people cross the Bering Strait from Asia to North America via a land bridge and begin to populate the New World. At 2358, many animal species are domesticated, and the first permanent settlements appear. In fact, the entire history of human civilization fits into the last minute of this conditional year. At the 17th second was the beginning of the Bronze Age. At the 23rd second, the emergence of writing. At the 27th second, the construction of the Cheops Pyramid in Giza. At 37 seconds, people developed iron production. At the 40th second is considered the date of the foundation of Rome. And another second later, the most ancient religious and philosophical movements arise: Buddhism and Confucianism. At 43 seconds, Alexander the Great captures the Middle East and Central Asia, creating his great empire. A couple of seconds later, the power of the Roman Empire is established throughout the Mediterranean. The next second, Christianity arises. At 48 seconds, the Middle Ages begin. At 49, another world religion arises: Islam. 10 seconds before the new year, an ancient Russian state emerges in Eastern Europe. And 5 seconds later, Columbus discovers America. In the last second of this year, the planet's population increased from 1 to 8 billion people. The Russian Empire and the Soviet Union that replaced it collapsed. 2 world wars and man's entry into space occurred, and the internet was invented, thanks to which you can see this video. In this conditional second, many events happened that turned the world upside down and shook humanity. But this year will soon end, and what the future history of our planet will be determined by us, the people living in the next second of history. It's up to us to now decide whether another global extinction will occur, whether new wars will break out, or new great discoveries will be made, and humanity will continue to spread beyond the borders of one planet.